Welcome to the Naked Gospel, where shame has no power, God's glory is boundless, and we get to carry that story in our bodies. Here we have conversations about sex, singleness, marriage, pornography, parenting, everything beyond and in between. We're featured on every major podcast platform, as well as YouTube. So please like, subscribe, share, so that you can join the movement that is already achieving a revival of sexual integrity throughout the entire kingdom.
Welcome, everybody, to the Naked Gospel Podcast. I have an exciting guest for you today. We have with us Britney Higgs from hercampaign.org, and Her Campaign is a anti-human trafficking ministry that I'm so excited about. They have 2 locations, one in Montana, one in Colorado. And before I steal all of your thunder, Britney, tell me a little bit about Her Campaign and what you guys are up to.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. It's a pleasure to be with you today. So Her Campaign is an organization that predominantly focuses on aftercare and residential programs for survivors of human trafficking. It really was born out of this position. I was with multiple NGOs working in war-torn areas overseas, helping to rescue these girls out of sexual exploitation and reintegrating them into their families in IDP camps. And when I sat down with these women, though, I kept hearing them say over and over again, even though they were physically safe, physical freedom, right? Just kept saying, "I wish I would have died in captivity because I have nothing else to give." So my heart cry after that was, Lord, there has to be something after the rescue. This cannot be the end of their story. And that is really where Her Campaign was birthed, was this idea of we want to fill that gap between rescue and freedom. So since 2016, we've been running safe home programs, and it's kind of been all over the place. We first started the first safe home out of our own home, and we did what is called a long-term program, which was up to a year at a time, integrating survivors into our family system and providing those wraparound care resources. Throughout that journey, though, we figured out that, that first 90 days is really crucial as they've exited trafficking, to have that stabilization period where we are looking at them comprehensively, mind, body, and spirit, and seeing how we can best come alongside of them to get them to their long-term goals. So in that, we created an emergency stabilization program, opened that up in 2022 in Billings, Montana, saw incredible results of the survivors entering into this program, having that clinical, spiritual, and physical medical assistance to help their body, mind, and spirit stabilize and then get into a long-term program. And with that, we see that as one of the biggest gaps across the nation. Is long-term programs are needing that stabilization piece before they're receiving survivors of human trafficking. So our goal now is to expand that across the nation wherever it's needed. And the second location is Denver, Colorado, and we just opened up in February.
That's amazing. Yeah, it breaks my heart to hear that the norm or the response you would get is, "We wish we had died in captivity." And it's amazing to hear how you guys are seeing that gap and filling that gap, because I think that's, we can't not see the human soul in this, and their souls and what's happening to them in this darkest place. And so I mean, I think it's magical that you guys are connecting this long-term care component to coming alongside of these individuals, to nurturing them like that. And you are right, like this, it's a little bit cliche to say it, but anti-human trafficking, anti-sex trafficking, it's kind of been in for a little bit, but you guys are in the appropriate levels of the depth of care where that long-term holistic healing takes place. And so I think that's perfect and beautiful. And I mean, do you have any stories you can share? Obviously, I know confidentiality, I imagine, is incredibly important, but you know, someone is brought to you from a horrendous, tragic, terrifying situation, and like what are some of those stories coming out the other side?
Yeah, no, great question. We recently, so in Montana, we run what is called a safe house, and it's a 2-week landing spot in partnership with law enforcement and other first responders, and then organizations that are focusing on the rescue component of getting these women out of these situations and getting them somewhere safe. So, historically, law enforcement would just use hotel rooms and rescue
Mm,
these women out of their situation and then put them right back into the situation that they came out with, and it just wasn't effective. So
yeah,
we said, "Hey, we will create this safe house that has 24/7 staff." It has, licensed professionals that can do resource assessments to try to figure out what their next step is and then get them somewhere safely. Most recently, we had someone who was 19 years old, and she was actually being trafficked through a well-known drug gang, and, she was rescued out of that, and through a partner, we got her to our Safe House program. She was a good candidate, and she was ready to make that informed decision to go to our emergency stabilization program down in Denver, so they transported her down there, and she just now is about to graduate our 90-day stabilization program. The difference that we have seen and in her healing in that 90 days is absolutely miraculous, and she is gonna step into a long-term program that's up to 18 months, where they are gonna come alongside of her and for the first time in her life, give her job skills training, help her, work towards her GED, and any other thing that is gonna get her set up for her dreams. That's the path that she's on, and so we're celebrating right now, as a team, like, her coming to us, her going through that program. I think one of the most impactful stories is we have a survivor in our program down in Denver too, who came in, and we are very much about holistic healing. We know that it is through Jesus that we really have transformed lives, but I think it also does a disservice if we're not looking at the practicalities of the body and the mind,
yeah.
and that our brains really are a muscle and an organ that needs to be healed, and, trauma just affects it greatly, and so we really do come alongside clinically and medically. We offer things like neurofeedback and some integrative health. We do IV therapy drips for nutrition because these bodies are so depleted. So we do that all comprehensively, but when she came to our program, she didn't know where she stood with the Lord. She didn't know what she thought about him, and about day 3, she was ready to take off. So she's out on a smoke break outside, and she's running through the story in her head of, "How am I gonna get out of this situation? I need to tell the program director I'm leaving. Where am I gonna go?" She's starting to do all of this, and out of nowhere, a man's voice from behind her. She said she even turned around to look at it. A man's voice, as clear as day, said, "You chose to be here, and only you could have made that choice. You were in the right spot." And she said peace just came over her, and she was freaked out a little bit because she's like, "What is this voice?" And what was crazy was the thing that she was dealing with that morning was she was like, "I can't make good decisions. I have made so many bad decisions in my life. How did I trust that coming here was a good decision?" And what that voice told her was, "You made the right decision. Only you could have made that decision, and you're where you're supposed to be." And so she's also about to graduate, and she is on fire. She told us just the other day, she said, "Britt, when I came here, God was a scary man who just judged me and was a lot like my biological father." And she's like, "That's how I've always seen him. And now I know that he loves me and that I am," and she actually put a F word in that too, which I love because it's just like there's nothing that she can do that could get in the way of his love, and she knows that. And so she's walking into her long-term program a completely transformed human being because she now knows the love of her father and that he is calling her and wooing her to himself.
I mean, that's amazing. And I think what breaks my heart the most is that she had no context for that love prior to that moment. That's so much of the work Proven Ministries is up to, right? Where we are working with men and women, but many men. Uh, and we discuss this supply and demand concept, but like, can you imagine a world where she
Mm,
grew up always knowing that kind of love
yeah.
from men in her life, because they were emulating the love of the Father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Praise God, she got to experience it through her campaign and through the work that you guys are doing. But I would love for you to speak maybe to just the men listening who maybe don't realize how much they're able to speak into the lives of women, of individuals who might be trafficked in the future. You never know where someone's story is going to go. But as men, we do walk through the world as protectors, and we can share and show how we love as how the Father loves. Would you
Absolutely.
agree?
Oh, I agree 100%. And I think there is a deep connection between how our culture views sexuality and how that intersects in the existence of human trafficking. And when we normalize things like pornography and hookup culture and objectifying bodies, we create an environment where exploitation can really thrive. And we know that, one of the topics you talk about so much is pornography, and like studies show that pornography not only desensitizes the viewer, but it increases the demand of the behavior. And so when we have a culture that treats human beings as commodities for pleasure, it feeds that mindset that the traffickers have and that what they use to exploit their victims. And so it's all about disrupting the demand. And so to your point, men's voice in this is so crucial. And one of the things that my husband and I say all the time is if you're wanting to get to the root issue of human trafficking, it is the hearts of men. And so men have a crucial role in this conversation, not just as allies, but like you said, protectors of dignity. And when men are committing to live lives of sexual integrity, they actively are dismantling that culture that fuels trafficking. And it's not about shame, it's about calling men into their God-given identity as leaders and protectors and healers. And so anyways, I do think that like you said, this is a conversation and the church needs to be a place where we're talking about this more so that we can really dismantle and help to reach men's hearts for their own sexual purity, but then how that is going to disrupt the demand of human trafficking in our culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's so imperative, and I love how you kind of brought up the cultural implications and the way our culture engages it. Because one thing that is honestly quite heartbreaking from our vantage point of the work that we do is for Lord willing you to be out of a job one day and her campaign to not even need to be doing any more work anymore would mean we would have to live in a world where everyone, including men, are walking around as beacons of light, as men and women of sexual integrity,
Yes.
breaking these narratives. And I just see this. I'm curious if you see this as well, but it seems like some people aren't interested in addressing that root piece because the supply and demand cycle can only end if you break both pieces of the cycle.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I think for all of us, we know that healing is brutal. It's not an easy thing. We honestly have this fear that if we walk through the healing journey, it will kill us. If we are exposed, if our sin is exposed, if it's revealed, if it's brought into the light, it will kill us. When in reality, right? It's just like whatever is revealed, the Lord is wanting to heal. And it is through that process of going through that we come to the other side where that is where true freedom exists. And so I think because of shame, there's a lot of deep cover up for what we're dealing with. And I think we just have to normalize, like, hey, that we all have fallen short. And we really just need to expose the stuff that is happening in our life. The church needs to be talking about it more. We need to have resources and people to come alongside to understand. Trauma is very much intermixed with all of this too. I don't know the exact statistics, but I know there's a great number of men who become predators because they were first victims.
Oh, yeah.
Just to share a quick story of that, when we very first got into this about 12 years ago, we were down with a ministry that goes into strip clubs and does outreach to the girls that are working there. And, they're saying that these women are 18 and above, but you look at the faces of these girls and you just know that they're actually a lot younger than that. And I remember going into one of these strip clubs and seeing the men that were over these women and being so angry. When I got back in the car, I don't know if I had ever felt hate like that. And I just was so mad. I could have punched somebody in the face right in that moment. And in that moment, the Lord like, just chastised me, with his love, and he was just like, "You have no idea what you are doing." And in that, whether it was my own imagination or whatever, I got a picture of that guy that I had just seen in that strip club over these girls, and he brought me all the way back to when he was a little boy and a vision of him being exploited and him being sexually abused, and he's like, "You don't know what my justice looks like, and if you aren't willing to fight for him, and his heart, then you don't understand this, and I can't trust you with more. I can't trust you with these women." And it broke me. It broke me. So we need to normalize this conversation for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. Interesting because I have thousands of men that would be ready to raise their hands tomorrow to go kick in doors and protect these women.
Yes.
But the less attractive part of this conversation is, okay, guys, yes, plug into her campaign. Yes, join the fight. But the most tangible, best way to engage is for us to take one, first and foremost, personal responsibility for our own sexual integrity,
Yeah.
but then two, to become these beacons of light and really proper discipleship where we're replicating. Because so you probably don't know this, but our ministry, we built a parents resource
Mm.
because the average age of exposure is getting so young now. And so to your point of most of these individuals were abused or exposed at ridiculously early ages, our culture is just inundated with everything around broken sex and sexuality, commodifying the body. And we want mom and dad to get in the fight to really again break these cycles. But that, I mean, for us to work ourselves out of a job is like why I wake up every morning because I want to see a world where you can't find victims because there are no victims because we live in a redeemed world where families and men and women are someone, maybe the girl, here's an example, the girl you said who was in a gang and she was being trafficked. How many opportunities did men in those vicinities of those places have to either protect her from getting in there in the first place, speaking truth into her life at an early age, right? Like we never imagine and can see the ripple effects, but God, our God is that big and he can do those things. And so for me, I'm the first one, give me a door to go kick in and I will happily come join you on the front lines. But I think it's a better conversation to have where it's like there are individuals called to be doing that, like her campaign and like our law enforcement individuals and individuals that are going into those places. But we don't have to feel like we don't have anything that we can do because to your point, we can muster up an army of kingdom warriors, men and women, families, churches that are acting as these beacons of light for changing this narrative. I had a horrible situation years ago when I went to Thailand, and I got to witness firsthand American sex tourism,
Yeah.
and it was disgusting. I was in a hostel one evening, and this crazy dumb American brought in this Thai girl. And obviously, like, we did not let it happen, but it was normalized in this culture. And you would go to restaurants and you would see it. Obviously, there are other components of human trafficking that aren't just sex trafficking, but the entire sex tourism industry is fueled, a majority of the percentage is fueled by American men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this has to end.
Yes. No, it's so true. Human trafficking is a human dignity crisis, and it demands a heart level response. And we absolutely have to hit the hearts of men. So everything you were saying is so spot on because it's just like it starts with us and our heart condition to be able to combat this issue.
Yeah, and that's so good. So Brittany, how did you end up in this work? What is some of your story that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah. Um Well, I think starting where God broke my heart for this was it's interesting because it was a friend who does mission trips to go support a safe house in India and Nepal. So again, what you're talking about, European and American men going over to do these just rounds with these brothels, and there's children over there that do not see the light of day for years as they were being sex trafficked in these places. And so my friend was doing missions trips over there, came back, told me the atrocities of human trafficking, and my heart just broke in a way that I hadn't been broken before. And in that, you don't know exactly why you're broken for it, but you just know that there's something there pulling on your heartstrings, and there is redemption and restoration that God is bringing in your own life, because that's just who he is. He turns all things, for good for those who love him. And so we were broken for this issue. We really started, like, had some advice early on that said, start with where you are with what you have, and it will be enough. And so my husband and I, we had a film company. We're actually more entrepreneurial than we are nonprofit leaders, or were back in the day. And so we just used our film company to try to bring more awareness to this issue. That's what brought me overseas to northern Iraq, where, that story of sitting down with these women and just hearing that they were so broken after the rescue. But what I didn't realize in that time is, after one of those trips to Iraq, I came back and we were offered a position to travel with an NGO for a year and be the documentary filmmakers to bring it back to the churches in America. This is what we were seeing, and this is what's happening, and trying to garner greater support for this issue. And in that, my husband and I prayed and did not feel peace at all, and my flesh was like, "Yep, this is what we're doing, high risk documentary work forever. This is our calling, this is our gig." And the Lord very clearly told us no, and what we didn't realize is he was setting us up on a path of healing where, again, going back to that whole thing of this is a heart issue, and he cares more about our hearts at first than what we can do for others. And my husband and I just went through a crazy healing journey, and during that time, I remembered through some therapy that I had my own story of some sexual abuse when I was growing up, and it was the Lord showing me, like, "Hey, I'm breaking your heart for this because you were a little girl who you this was done to you, and you started to believe that your body was only used for the pleasure of men." And I needed to come in, and I needed to restore that place before you could pour that out, be the overflow for others experiencing something similar. And through this journey, we also found out that it was crazy. Like, the Lord in his kindness just started to reveal things. And I have a very long line of sexual abuse in my family, and I come from an incredible Christian family. That's the thing. It's like this issue hits every demographic. It's inside the church walls, right? And so, we just, like, through my own healing, it was like God was shining a light on my family's lineage and how this has been something that has affected us for a very long time. But now we get to be those beacons of light since we've walked through that hard journey of healing, and we're still on that with the Lord, right? But since we're walking through this with him, he is revealing what he needs to in his time to heal, so that we can be a light and a beacon to others. And so, that's kinda how we got started, and then I think that's a core reason why God asked us to do this. Is I wasn't trafficked by any means, but I can understand that little girl who was sexually abused, as most of our victims are, that sets them on a path of self-destruction unless there is that intervention to come in and to help them to heal before they become victims of trafficking.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I love even how you connected, those unfortunately dark parts of your story and how there's some motivation there. I say that all the time, that you are a generational curse breaker. We are generational curse breakers. And in so saying that, it's not me saying everyone listening to this needs to go start a nonprofit. It means that where you are, God is ready to move
Yes.
and change the next generation around you, underneath of you. If you are having children, if you haven't yet had children, I have 3 children. I believe you have some children as well.
Yeah.
And so I know one of my motivations as a parent is if I can give my children a different story, and even more than just giving them a different story, if I can raise them up to be emissaries of light, to be protectors, to contribute to the environment, the vision that we want to see in the world, I think that is where the most transformational change can and should begin to occur. What
Yes.
do you say?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And when we started the Her campaign, we did it as a family. And it was when our two oldest boys were, I think they were 3 and 5. And there was so many concerns when we said, "Hey, we're gonna start a safe house, and the first one's gonna be out of our own personal home." I as you can imagine, family members and loved ones were just like, you guys are crazy, and what are you exposing your children to?" But I not that I'm not saying there's hard stuff, because there is for sure, but when the Lord is asking you to do something and to walk out in obedience, the grace that is on your life to do it is phenomenal, and we got to watch our boys, and now all 4 of our children, they don't know anything different than living in safe houses and doing this work, but they have an understanding of how to love people without judgment, how to be those beacons of light. It was crazy when they were little, when they were a light to these women, even more so at times than Sammy and I were, because there wasn't any mess to get in the way of their love. Children just love. They're just joy. They're just peace. And so it has been the coolest thing to watch how the generational stuff is going to them, of like they are going to be able to love people so well because of what they've experienced. And that truly did start with my grandparents too. They were taking in anybody and everybody, and we saw them stop the some generational cycles of abuse, and it was in that I learned what it looked like to take in the broken, the hurting, the marginalized, exploited into your home, and to walk alongside of them. And so now that our kids get to follow that legacy too, it really is the most incredible thing. That is how it's gonna change the world. Revival starts within the family.
I couldn't agree more. And yes, I wake up every day being a parent. I joke with my wife. I'm like, if I could figure out how to get paid to just do this full time, that's all I want to do.
Right.
Because as believers, and to your point, like I think it is just as such a calling to see that in the kingdom mindset of like what we are put on this earth to do. We are to seek truth, goodness, and beauty, and bring about a revival of sexual integrity for the goodness of Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross. And when we talk about trafficking, the work that you're doing, it is so dark, and it is so deadly, and it is so pervasive. You see the things about like how many people are trafficked during the Super Bowl, and all the it is literally everywhere, and our culture and our children are being just slow dripped the lie from the enemy that the body is just here for your pleasure. It is here for you to consume, but we are called to look different. We are called to be the light on the hill.
Mhm.
And I think for anyone listening right now, that I think that's how you internalize this conversation. It's how do we act? How do we behave? What do we do with this information? Because there are some very amazing orgs like Her Campaign and others that are really pushing against this darkness, but we want to back you guys up, and and for us to hear and feel that calling and then to take action. I think I'm biased because this is the work that we do, but I can't see how this doesn't connect to everything else.
I agree with you 100%. I think it is the core of, I mean, even just scripturally, it talks about, sin is bad, but sexual sin, it's just the sin against oneself. And it is one of the greatest deceptions of the enemy to come against this very thing. It is intimacy. It is reflection of Christ in the church. It is the core of who we are and what we desire as human beings, is that intimacy. And so I think this is the most important topic in our world.
Yeah, it's a pervasive cancer, to your point earlier, that is in all of the church, in the unchurched, in everywhere. We did some statistics several years ago, just trying to get a read on how Christians were struggling with this. And there have been several studies done in the past, and it is almost identical to the secular world. But we're called to look differently. And I think we're not dealt a good hand in the 21st century West, in the world that we live in. The amount of guys we work with who walk around, I mean, it's not even the amount anymore. 99.99% of them are walking around with smartphones in their pockets that have untapped access to the darkest things of the internet that fuel this demand. And yeah, and
Yeah.
we see some movements forward, we see some movements back. I know it's been really exciting even in my state of Virginia, and I think there's like up to 11 or 12 states now. They've like shut down Pornhub and some of these other websites. So praise God, movements are happening in this direction, but still we're not done. It's not enough. And so it would be crazy for us to assume that there's not somebody listening who doesn't have a piece of their story that at an inappropriately early age they were impacted by this. I'm just curious, you know, what would you say to somebody like that? I could equally, share my thoughts as well, but they may have been exposed at the age of 5, at the age of 6. They may have been sexually abused by a sibling. They may think and only see themselves as a commodity to be consumed. And I can't think of anybody better to speak into that than you.
Yeah. Now, I would just say, first of all, I see you, I hear you, I understand where you're coming from. I don't know your full story, but I do resonate with a lot of what you could be dealing with right now. And there is hope. There is hope for a future outside of this. The enemy comes in with shame. He wants to kill, steal, and destroy. But God, like, wants a John 10:10 life for us, right? Life and life abundantly. And that is possible in Him. Walk into every situation where He is tugging your heart to step into healing. Reach out first and foremost to people who are safe people to you, and start that journey of just exposing it, bringing it into the light. There's nothing to be ashamed of. God is right there. Like, He's already covered it. This is something I told one of my kiddos the other day when they were dealing with something. I said, "Isn't it crazy that the blood of Jesus covers you and all He sees is His Son?" There's literally nothing that hasn't been dealt with on the cross already. You are perfect in His sight. And so you get to come to a loving Father. You get to come and receive the mercy that He has for you. And then one of my favorite verses is Romans 8:18, and it says, "I am convinced that this present suffering is nothing compared to the glory that is about to be revealed in me." And I'm just telling you that God is going to take your story and He is going to make a glory story out of it. He turns everything over for your good. And what is often your pain is also your purpose. What the enemy has tried to come against is actually what the Lord is stepping you into. It is part of your destiny. So remember, we live in an upside down kingdom where it looks topsy turvy and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense and there's a lot of pain. But if you turn it up into the kingdom, into right standing with the Lord, knowing that you are seated in heavenly places with Him, Ephesians 2:6, there's literally nothing you can't overcome. He is using all of it to write a different story over your life. So step in, embrace it. He is right there. I think that's all
Amen.
I got.
No, that's
I keep
beautiful. And
going
and
on.
and and to your point, like, my story is that story. And anyone listening, like, I think some people think like, who am I? Lord, who am I? And it's God wants to redeem. He's in the resurrection business and He's in the redemption business. And He wants to take that and use it to help other people and to heal you first, and then to allow, like, it's crazy that I have the job that I have, and the components of your story that are inspiring to you to do the work that you're doing today. And I think that's almost the ultimate kingdom win move, in my opinion. It's whoever you are, if you're listening, there's a high probability that you have experienced this darkness in your life. But first and foremost, God wants to heal it and sit with you neck in it and alongside of you and just be there. But then he's going to use it. He might use it in a random conversation over coffee. He might use it and you go and become the CEO of an anti-sex trafficking ministry. You might end up being, like wherever God will move, he's doing it all so that he can redeem and restore and resurrect and ultimately so that we can come together and be with him forever. And I think equally for somebody, I want to say there are people and there are communities that are safe. And if you're a man and you're struggling and full on addicted to pornography and or unwanted sexual behaviors and you're like, I don't know where to go. Like, I mean, that's the work that we do. And if you are a woman or a man and you are on the doorstep or in a trafficking experience, like that's the work that Brittany's doing. But
Yeah.
these bulwarks of lighthouses and safe communities and that is what we are called to, that is what we are building, that is what we're about. We are in the resurrection business, as I like to say, and not from our power, from the power we have through the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And so, Brittany, I am excited about what you guys are doing. I'm excited to hear about the long-term care component, right? Because pulling these individuals out is priority number one. But priority number two is putting them on the path and walking alongside of them. Where I know you guys have big dreams and ambitions, and I want to see you achieve those. What is next for her campaign? You now have something that literally just opened up last month in Colorado. So
Yeah.
how can we be praying for you, and what visions do you guys have for her campaign?
Yeah, well, right now across the nation, there are only an estimated 1,600 beds specifically trained to come alongside survivors of sex trafficking. That is not
Wow,
enough
that's
for,
too low.
right? For the hundreds of thousands of victims of sex trafficking we believe to exist in the United States every year. And so for us, what we want to do is, again, be that gap between the rescue and freedom. And so that looks like putting up these 25-bed facilities that are coming alongside survivors for the first 90 days to stabilize them and get them dreaming again about what they want to do for their long-term future. And so in that, we are excited to have a nationwide expansion plan. We're wanting to bring this particular program across the nation wherever it's needed. Right now, we have a team on the ground in Nashville, and so that is our next location we're looking at within, 18 months. We're hoping to have that up and going. And so we definitely need the support. Something that we say all the time is that this is a church problem, but it's also a church solution as is everything in our world, right? And if the body really rose up to be who she is, then we would see this thing eradicated. And so first and foremost, we need your support just in this crucial stabilization period for these survivors of human trafficking. This is what is going to springboard them into long-term care and in long-term health and freedom. So we always need our support. Our church community, those who want to get this word spread far and wide, reach out to us. We love to come and talk to our brothers and sisters in the faith and just be able to spread like the stories of impact and victory that we are seeing, but also the more that needs to take place and how the church can come and get involved. We are always for, if you feel called to start your own nonprofit, 100% do it. But we are about a decade into this, and I'm telling you, it is brutal and it is hard. And we have learned a lot over the last 10 years through a lot of failure of how to do this and come alongside of these survivors well. We've sat on the ground with them for the last 10 years and said, how can we do this better? So we've got our foot in the door of like doing this for about a decade. And I just recommend like whether it's her campaign or reaching out to organizations that are in your community, we always need more support. The workers are few and the ministry is big. And so I just want to just encourage everybody that reach out to your local organizations, support the Her campaign, get involved in what we're doing because it's important work, but we need everybody to come along and join us.
And we're absolutely here for it, Brittany. So how can we follow you guys? How can we plug into what you're doing? where should we go find you so we can stay plugged in with what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. So our website is hercampaign.org and we're on all of the social medias. So follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Instagram is probably the best place to keep up to date with us right now, but we're on all the platforms. So follow along, reach out to us for more information and we'll share with how you can get involved.
Thank you. That's amazing. And, Brittany, it's been such an honor to have you on. Our vision is to see a revival of sexual integrity throughout the entire bride of Christ. And for all of our listeners, we can resonate that, we're with you, we're for you, we're excited to connect with you because this is a movement that we want to be behind. We want to be on the front lines with you. We want to play our part and our role as we do seek to see this revival of sexual integrity. And so it's been such an honor, and we're excited to just stay connected and to see how God is going to move. Nashville is exciting. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. And I can't wait to hear about all the new cities that he's going to do and move. But to your point, the 1,600 beds is not enough. And
Right.
that number surprises me. That should triple and quadruple. That's ridiculous. And specifically tied to your methodology and your DNA of approach, which is that long-term sustainability piece. And we'll continue to do our work of fighting to build these bastions of families of men and of women that can be these beacons of light of sexual integrity in the world today. So it's been an honor, Brittany. Thank you so much. And we'll stay tuned and stay following with you, okay?
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Nick. This message is so important. Keep doing this work.
Yes, ma'am, we will. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay.